just as others have done for me, like in many different, Monday night is my night, and I'm here every Monday, and but so many testimonies that have been spoken to me or heard and listened to have given me hope, in hopes that one day my son would. Would do what he's done 3 months ago, and that was reach out for help and ask. And at first, that's the first step, right? Is admitting that we're powerless over our addiction and seek treatment, And so, again, it's been probably a good 5 years, but God is still faithful, and I'm so thankful. So yeah, it's our job to spread the good news. I always think, well, what do I have to share? I'm just a mom, I just don't have a whole lot. I have a history. Everybody has a story, right? If we're alive and breathing, we have a story to tell. We all come from somewhere and have gone through something. But it's in the end, it's all about God and His glory and what He allows us. We go through, but He brings us out of it, And so I'm just always so thankful. So with that being said, it's funny how God works. Not only, of course, He's put these ladies in my path, and I think through those prayers it led to where we are today and how I met Tanya. As big as Facebook is, and as big as just the USA is, we met through it's called Prodigal.
Praying Our Loved Ones Home.
Yeah, Praying Our Loved Ones Home. And the lady that started it is from Minnesota,
yes.
Right? So, but when you something that catches your attention because you're drawn to it because you can relate to it, and you're drawn into it because you can so understand and relate to their story, right? And so, Praying Our Prodigal Son, or Home is, my son is prodigal, and maybe I'm the other prodigal brother, I don't, what part I am, but I'm, we're all just the one, and He'll leave the 99 for that one, and He thinks that we're all important, we're all worthy, we're all, but back to, so we met through Pam, and then she also has another one, it's called Thrive, and it just so happened that I'd seen something. Tanya lives in Spring, Tomball. Okay, but I just so happened to notice one day that she was you had a sober living home for men, and I just so happened to I saw a post, and I just so happened that I saw that you were at the Woodlands, or you were at a CR there. I saw the recovery there one day, and she posted something, and it caught my attention, and then I reached out to you, and I actually reached out to you because to ask for a testimony, is what it was.
Yes, that's right.
And you said, "Oh yeah, your house manager, has an awesome testimony," and so one thing led to another. We just kind of, and then I, heard about. Then I learned that you had your sober living home, not having a clue that. Really didn't even know a whole lot about sober living homes. Didn't think I needed, had the need to, but little did I know. Again, God is always orchestrating things and working behind the scenes and getting us ready and preparing us for what's to come. And so, gosh, that was, I don't know, it was good months ago. It was a long time.
4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, it was a while. And then I guess it was, I don't know, maybe.
Intervention or something. It's probably the next thing.
Yeah, you must have. Because she also, not only does she have a sober living home, she also has, she's an interventionist. And so she helps, people that need help, not only because she's also experienced the same thing. She's been where I'm at, has 2 sons. We have 4 sons total.
Yes, I have 4 sons, and my 2 youngest, and one of them is sitting right here, is in recovery. And so this was my story for really about a total of 15 years. so God does bring us through this. So it's a story of resilience and faith and belief and divine connections, which
Right.
is really kind of where we're going, is that we had a superior divine connection when we met online that day. I mean, there was no way for either one of us to know. We just met each other face to face. I just want to
Today.
tell y'all today. And it doesn't feel weird. It doesn't feel like I feel like I know her, like she's my sister, because she is my sister in Christ. And we do share something, and that is that we've had to support our children, our sons, through recovery, and do that and love them.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Got a little rocky there. We're going to get to that.
yes. So it's what 3.5. It's probably been close to 4 months
Yep.
when I yeah, maybe a little 4 months. I can't give the exact dates, but I reached out to Tanya asking about her intervention, how that all works, because I was clueless, had no idea. And so I reached out to her, and she totally gave me the time, and just very patient, very understanding. And I had questions, and she just walked me through it, and then I went home and told my husband, this is what she can offer, just because I knew this, well, I sort of knew the severity, and I was at the point where I knew something needed to be done pretty soon. And so I called her, we spoke, kind of got a little scared, and I'm like, kind of backed off, and but then she reached back out to me, and we were going to make something work. I mean, God knew that, something was in the works, and He had something planned. So maybe 2 weeks later, I didn't need the intervention, because again, God was already working on Alec. So that
Can we step in?
Yeah.
So Christina reached out to me. The type of intervention I do is a little bit different. Most people think of intervention, you think about it as seen on TV, very abrupt and very, kick doors down. I'm not that kind of person. So I actually chose a model that is evidence-based, and it's very much about the whole family. So it's holistic, and it's done in love. It's very invitational. And so, but it's very hard for families to grasp, to be honest with you. I work with peers to say, what's your elevator speech? Because I know how good it is, but then it's just really hard sometimes for families to grasp, what, we're gonna bring all these people together, like the whole family, and we're gonna talk about all of this? And I'm like, yeah, and they're like, no.
Mm-hmm. So
We spoke, and I kind of laid out, what the process would look like, and then just to back up a little bit, I just want to tell y'all that, I worked in corporate America for 25-something years, and because of my two sons, I knew 3-4 years prior to me going into this field that God was calling me to help others, and I have a love for the families too, not only the ones that are struggling, but the love for the families as well. So there's rarely ever anyone that ever reaches out to me that I don't forget. I mean, it's like I always want to know, what their names are, and because I immediately put it on my prayer list and I begin praying. And so Christina had shared a few things with me about Alec, and kind of there was a little bit of a gap in between us talking. And like I said, you called back that day and you said, he says he's ready, and I said, oh my gosh, praise God. Always when somebody's ready, praise God. And so we talked about that, and Christina was working, and so I began to help her identify some places where he could go, some treatment centers, because I work with all of them, throughout this area, throughout the country, and we talked about, what she was looking for, what we thought would be a good fit for Alec, and of course I never refer him anywhere where I don't feel, really comfortable and haven't been there, seen it, and,
Right.
dealt with people. But there were some things that, God had kind of prepared me for in working with, Christina and really many families. And experience in the progression of my son's addictions that as we spoke and we started talking about, you know, where he could go, and I think kind of the next thing is that Alec kind of began to delay a little bit. And if I remember correctly, it was, so this is like all the things that are like high on my radar screen, like, okay, well, he needs to work that extra shift at a restaurant, well, there's tips involved, and, you know, and then I think that he wanted to give a 2-week notice, which, you know, truthfully, most people that are deep into an addiction are not that responsible to give 2-week notices. You know, just several different things that he kind of was, you know, saying, you know, I want to go, but, you know, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do it.
Right.
So common, so common. Because I will tell you that the scariest thing for a person, I mean, it is terrifying for someone to fully submit and go into treatment because it's grief. I mean, they're giving up something that they love, and they know the pain that they're probably about to go through. But I think the biggest thing is that I specifically remember where I was picking my granddaughter up from school, and Christina and I were on the phone, and you know, sometimes God, I know, looking back, we've talked about this, that God ordered our steps. I mean, in every way, even when it felt like he wasn't. Like, I felt like I stepped into the flesh because I actually started getting very fearful of what might happen with Alec. And I began to warn her, to say, Christina, you need to be careful because here are the things that could happen while you're waiting to get him into treatment, while you're, you know, kind of trying to figure out that right timing, or, you know, waiting for him to come to you, or, you know, and it's all in God's timing. Everything happened. I mean, I'm not even going to negate that, you know, every bit of this was God's timing. But I had a suspicion, and I'll let her talk about this in a little bit, that his, just based on a few things that he said to me, that she said to me, that I felt like his addiction was a little more progressed than maybe what she knew. Now, I wasn't going to say that to her because that would put fear in her, and I didn't know that for sure. But I do think that the Holy Spirit was telling me that our son was a little bit deeper than what these parents knew. And so I felt a real sense of urgency. And so I think what God allowed me to do, maybe, was to get a little rough. I had to do a little tough love with my friend here. You know, I had found the places, and I'll never forget, because I was picking my granddaughter up from school, preparing for Bible study in our home, which, by the way, is predominantly recovering addicts that we've had going for like 4 or 5 years, just an organic Bible study that happens in our home. And I just felt frustrated. I'm like, this mother's not listening to me. You're not listening to me, Christina. You're not listening to, these are the things that can happen. You can't wait. You've got to go. And so I just, you know, planted a couple of seeds, you know, in terms of some things that, you know, could happen. And I said, you know, I've got you set up. You've got, you know who to call. Here, I've got 2 great places for you to go to. You know where they are. You've got the phone numbers. We'd already ran their insurance. We knew I mean, it was all. It was literally drop them off. Everything was good.
Right.
And I hung up, and I just was so frustrated. It wasn't like, I just was like, God, please, you know, this boy needs help, and I just felt a little bit of defeat, I guess, you know, just like, because I want to save everyone. And I went into Bible study, and people in the Bible study, because we've been together for so long, they immediately noticed my demeanor. And so a lot of them being in recovery, you know, I kind of shared, you know, I'm working with this mom, and gosh, you know, I just feel like, you know, there's something imminent, and, you know, he needs to get to treatment, and she's not listening to me, and, you know, I'm a little bit type A anyhow, so, you know, that doesn't, that I don't know if God put that in me or not, but it's there. And then I started feeling really guilty. Like, I was in the Bible study, and I'm like, gosh, you know, was I harsh, you know, did I, you know, I mean, I felt bad, you know, that maybe I had spoken to her, you know, in a way that wasn't pleasing to him. And then I just looked down, and we were just about to finish, and I had a text message from one of the treatment centers. Didn't end up being the one that he went to, but nevertheless, that said, thank you for referring Alec. Now, I don't get paid to send people to treatment centers, by the way. And so I'm like, what? What's happening here? What's going on? So, I really get everybody out of my house, immediately go to the back to my bedroom, and I called Christina. I'm sure she thought she was never going to hear from me again after our previous conversation. And I said, what's going on? Is something going on? I just got this message. Are you getting him into treatment? And so Alec had come home, and I think it's best for you to say kind of what happened then.
Yeah. Well, he had he sent a message. He wasn't living at our home. I had asked him to leave like 2 weeks prior because, it was evident what he was doing, and I couldn't deny it because I saw it in black and white in a text and on his phone or whatever. And so I no longer couldn't pretend. And so that's what I told him. Some of you ladies might know, but I told him that I think it's best that he find somewhere else to stay because I could no longer pretend that he wasn't using or was okay, whatever. And so, and I just still had a peace about it. Normally my old self would have been a basket case and just not able to sleep and not do well at all. But I knew that it had to be done. It had to happen that way. And so, as hard as it is for a mom to, I felt like you turn your back on your child, which no mother, no father, it's not the norm. You don't do that. But I knew deep down that it was necessary. It had to happen. And so that 2 weeks prior, I told him, he wasn't staying with us. So later on, it was found out that he was staying at a motel with a friend.
Which was a red flag for me, by the way. That was one of my concerns.
He has a mother, a father, a home. He has everything. There was no reason for him to be there, but that was his choice. And so that Sunday, it's just in time. He was already. He sent a message saying,
I don't want to live this way.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I don't want to live this way anymore. And when I saw that, I was like, and then shortly after that, it was another text saying, and I don't want to work at my job anymore. And that job was his lifeline to beat his addiction. And when he said that, I'm like, oh, he's serious. Yeah, there's something that's happening. And I said, that's all I said, whatever you need, if you're ready to get help, we're there. We're going to help. We're going to, do, and it's fine. We'll help you as long as he was willing to get help. And so sure enough, that Monday, like you said, he gave excuses on he needed to give work notice, and then another excuse was he didn't want to leave those friends that were back at the hotel, leave them or motel stranded or in a bind. They were struggling.
Somebody owed him money.
Yeah, numerous excuses. So Tanya was already forewarning me of what was to come, and just kind of, and it's still deep down, it's like, does she really know? And yeah, she really didn't know everything. And that was God just using her to speak to me, because even though, he may not be here giving, speaking in my ear, literally, he uses people, he uses others to be his hands and feet, and that's just what we all are called to do. So thankfully, he put you in my path. That's a tremendous blessing that I'll never be able to repay. But and so that's what happened. He gave the excuse that Monday, and she was frustrated with me, and I was just like, well, I can't force him, right? I can't go pick him up and make him come home with me. And I was okay, even though you were upset. I was, I was okay with him. Like I couldn't force anything, right? And he's 24 years old, so I let it be, and I slept fine, okay, that night. So the next morning he said he was ready. Like he's like, okay, y'all, you can come pick me up at the motel. And I'm like, well, I'm at work, but I can call my mom, his grandma. And sure enough, she's just like me. She ran to, pick him up, took him to her house from work. I picked him up, went home. I just wanted at least to have dinner with him. I wanted at least just sit down and And we ate, you know, my husband, Alec, and myself, and then afterwards, and I'm like, okay, Alec, well, what do we need to do? What is it that you're doing? I said, because we already knew he had problems with opiates, right? Because his first treatment was May of last year, and at that time he was not ready. He was kind of forced, and it was an ultimatum, and he wasn't ready, and so, but he went, and he quickly relapsed. I mean, he didn't even finish the program, and so. That night, and just honest as I've never seen Alec that honest. He's usually very manipulative. He's very condescending. He's just, not that honest. And I said, Alec, what is it? I said, is it the opiates again? And he's like,
So the next call that I got, when I called her, after they'd had this conversation, I could barely understand her. She was so broken. And she said, Alec is doing heroin. And right away, I said, Christina, it's going to be okay. And I said, and I know how you feel, because I remember when I had to attach that word to my son's name. It doesn't feel good. But a little education, just the truth of the matter is, what everyone needs to know is that anyone that's ever taken Oxycontin, most pain pills that are out there, it is a form of heroin. But, heroin is pretty scary, and it's dangerous. And it was what I feared. It was the thing that I felt that the Holy Spirit was telling me, because when a parent, a mother, tells me my son used to do opiates, but he doesn't anymore, I know that the progression of that drug. And I know that because my two sons were heroin addicts. And so basically they had the same progression. So I consoled. I think we prayed a little bit. And I said, okay, we've got a plan. Let's go. Let's get this thing in motion. I mean, at this point, I had gone from, here's your numbers, here's your places, good luck. And now I'm like, oh no, let's go. I got to get in this and help her get this done. And truly, I mean, it was like having myself on the other end of the phone. That's what it was. That's what it was. And so, of course, I wasn't going to let this mother or this father or this son go without my help, because I knew that I could help them. And so they were really, she said, he's got to go tonight. He's got to go tonight. And I agreed. I said, yes, he needs to go tonight. I mean, just go, bring him this stuff later. Don't even worry about what he has. Just, you can bring all of that later. And we had talked about two different treatment centers, and I think that this is like a very significant part of the story, just in terms of how God just went before us in every way, all the way back to, the divine connection. I mean, we just see it. We just see the interweavings in this, like, from day one. So there was a treatment center that had a faith-based track, and so we talked about that. The only problem is that it didn't have, like, the continuation of care, which is really important, because, me living this for 15 years, my kids have gone through treatment so many times. I knew that, inpatient, 30 days, come home, that's not really set up for best success. You really need that, all those outpatient, partial hospitalization, intensive outpatient, sober home living. And then the other place did have the all three of those programs. And I had learned, I've worked with this treatment center, and actually a very good friend of mine that's also an interventionist works there, and I never knew until on the phone with them about Alec that they had their alumni, the people that have gone through their program, they do fundraisers, and they will scholarship patients for their sober home living. So because when they go from inpatient to outpatient, they've got to have sober home living simultaneously, especially with the distance of, where this treatment place is and where they live. And so I said, Christina, I said, this is really like a great thing. I've never actually ever heard of another treatment center that does this. I mean, there's lots of alumni that do a lot of things, but I'd never heard of the scholarships. But it was made very clear to me that, you know, yes, we have it. Now, Alec is going to need to come in this door showing that he is serious about his recovery. And every day that he's here, we need to see that he is serious about his recovery. And so I said, there's no promises because it's all up to Alec.
Right.
It's all up to Alec.
Right.
And so you guys were driving down the road, and Christina and I probably had several times that we talked, hung up, called back again, and there was just like this big decision, you know, around which way to go. They just started driving because it was in the same direction. It was just, you know, stop here or go a little bit further. And they were trying to decide, you know, which place to take Alec to. And I was really kind of going, you know, gosh, you know, the faith-based, you know, I know that that's, you know, so important. But the truth of the matter is that, you know, somebody can find recovery and God anywhere, okay? And so, you know, I kept saying, you know, I just kept going back to, you know, as an interventionist, I know that a lot of times when people kind of fall off track, it's during transition. So it's when they go from inpatient and then they go, oh, you know, I don't really think I need that outpatient. You know, I think I'm doing pretty good. I fell for that. Not with him, but with his older brother. I fell for that. You know, he looked good, his eyes were good, he was put on a little bit of weight, and I thought, yeah, I don't think we need it, and we did need it. So I just kept going back to, you know, that it had like, it just would be so seamless. And then Christina, you know, there was a lot of praying. I had my whole Bible study praying. I mean, we actually held hands before everybody left, and we prayed for this family and Alec, the whole Bible study. And so it's kind of almost funny, but Christina had spoken to the intake specialist at this one treatment center, and then, you know, where Alec was going. And, you know, we take for granted sometimes what an act of kindness can do and how God uses people in their acts of kindness. And she said, you know, we're going to this place, and the only explanation I have is that that person on the phone was nicer to me. And I didn't feel like the one at the other place was as nice to me. And I said, okay, you know. And so they went.
Yeah, we turned around. We made a big, U-turn, and we were like, you know what, this is where we're heading.
Yeah.
This is a place for him. I just felt it.
Yeah.
And so, I don't regret it. And it's so funny because right after that, I was at, that same week, that happened on a Tuesday. We were there, you know, we dropped him off that evening, that really late that night actually. And then Thursday I went to a women's retreat. And it just so happened, like, I mean, there was confirmations throughout that weekend for me that he was in the right place. I mean, just by talking to other ladies, and they knew of certain people that were working there. And it's so ironic because just the other day I pulled open a book and last year Kima Palms was written down on there, and not even knowing, and I'm just like, wow, this is, you know, this God had already was, I mean, way before, you know, before we can even imagine or fathom, you know, he was already lining up things. But so that's where we dropped him and we left him, and I think last week he got his 90-day chip, 2 weeks ago, actually, and you know, those are just little baby steps, and we think, but they're huge. You know, they're actually huge in my eyes or in their eyes, or it
is huge.
It is, and because, like she said, it's the stigma that's attached to an addict or someone that's using, and
Or the drug.
Exactly. Like, just have a hard time. Just even saying the word is hard for me because you just never imagine, you know, that your child and whatever resort to, you know, I just never ever could possibly fathom in a million years. But I think it happens more often than we know or like to admit. I think, you know, we know of someone, or if not have someone in our immediate family that struggles with an addiction. Just some people like to hide it better than others and pretend it's just not so, you know. Whether it be in alcohol, because alcohol is just as, you know, just a more addictive, I think, is harder.
It's a very dangerous drug to come off.
And whether it be immediate family, distant family, you know, or just a friend, a loved one, someone knows someone, you know, that has gone through, or that's struggling, you know, and, but anyhow, he's there, and he's been, a little over 90 days, I have to count the weeks, but,
In Sober Home Living, he
he's
got the
in Sober-
scholarship.
He did get the scholarship, that is,
Mhm.
yeah, another
Which is a
huge blessing.
huge blessing.
Yes, yes, yes. And, I mean, you know, it's, like they say, it's one day at a time, and, it's not something that really just goes away. It's just something they learn to deal with, and find better coping, mechanisms, and just, you know, me and my husband go there weekly, and there's a family meeting that we go on Thursdays, and then there's, you know, we go to an Al-Anon meeting, and then he goes to his AA meeting, and he's just active in his recovery, whereas he did none of that, you know, prior. And just another thing that I probably forgot to just share, that not only did he tell us that night what he was using, just outright, and I guess he knew that it needed to be said, and it needed to be known and brought out to the light, and but I think it was after our second meeting, actually, there on a Thursday. You know, we're in this big huge room. Dang it. We're in this big huge room, and with a lot of strangers, and, you know, you go individually, kind of like here, and you just, he has a topic maybe that week, or you just talk and you share, just like what we do. And I was so, I think I went before Alec, and I was sitting next to Alec, and I just had this anxious feeling, like it was overpowering almost, like, I didn't know why. I mean, I was fine up until then, you know. I just had this anxiety, like this anxiousness that just wouldn't, and I even said it, I said, I don't know what it is, but I'm feeling very anxious all of a sudden, and I don't know. It's so strange, just that connection between a mother and her child, that you feel what your child feels. It will never go away. I don't care what the heck happens. A mother feels deeper than, I don't know what. I mean, they were in our womb, like,
Yeah.
How do you not, you know? And this came over me, and I don't even remember what else words I said that day, but I just know I said, I don't know what it is. I'm feeling very anxious, you know? And so shortly, I mean, right after that, Alec spoke, and Alec said, well, it's funny that she says that, you know, that my mom says that, because I said it now, but how do you say it? I think what his rock bottom was, it happened in that motel room. That he almost overdosed. And his friend was there to, no, it wasn't his friend, it was only God. Brought him back. And again, as hard as it was, and I knew that I had to let him go, but God spared his life. And so that's why he said he didn't want to live like this anymore. He knew he couldn't.
And I can't help but think that happened while we were having conversations. And that was the Holy Spirit. And so when I thought I was acting out in the flesh and being harsh with her, I really think it was the Holy Spirit saying, you gotta nudge this mother. You gotta, because I too I have found a son, this one, on the floor, overdosed. And he spent 8 days in the ICU, and it's only by the grace of God that he's here today.
Yes.
With over 7 months of sobriety.
Yes.
And so, yes, and so I like to believe that, you said it earlier, nothing's in vain. Not if we're a believer. nothing's in vain. And that we have to find a purpose for the pain that we've gone through. I mean, there's a purpose, you know, nothing gets to us without going through the hands of God. And so if we believe that, then we have to believe that this was allowed, and what are we going to do with it? And so for me, it was to be there for Christina and for other people. And it was, I mean, even when she called me to tell me that, I was overwhelmed because I, you know, just kind of did a recall of from the beginning to the end, and realized that, you know, this boy was laying on the floor in a motel while her and I were having conversations about how to get him into treatment.
Sure. Right.
So God's grace
That's right.
and mercy and redemption and recovery.
Yes. Definitely.
I love to, over the last 3 to 5 years, especially since I've been in this work, I love to just be able to see the interweavings of God,
Mhm.
and how I think about the story of Esther and how things had to happen in an order, if you remember. You know, she, first of all, how terribly dangerous it was for her to approach the king in the first place. But then, you know, she went the first time, but the timing wasn't right. And so there were all these things that had to line up. I mean, it had to be just lined up just perfectly. And that's why I know it was all God's timing, even though I felt it wasn't. It was. And I mean, and it was, because it happened all in the same night.
Mhm.
Like when I saw no way, he had a way. When I personally, not this mom, but when I was seeing no way,
Right.
he had a way. And so I just always think about that with the story of Esther, and just and in this situation, how, I mean, everything was lined up precisely. I mean, there's no way to deny that this was God ordained from the very beginning, and that we're sitting next to each other and we're telling you guys the
Yes.
story. So
And your son here and my son over there?
yeah, and my other son as well too.
Yes.
He's well too. So,
Always hope.
there's
That's what we
always
do.
hope, and that's the thing, is that I think for those of y'all that are, you know, struggling with this, with family members, you know, I think the biggest thing that I see people struggle with is, you know, when the relapses, you know, the bumps in the road, and, you know, you just have to stay in prayer, cover them in prayer, and keep the hope. I mean, I always say, you know, I look at my son right here and I say, God didn't let him live to fail us now. And so I just have to put all my trust in all of his promises and everything that he's said that he's going to do for us.
Yep. And he even prayed for us before we started.
Yeah.
He always
Yes,
has a
he did.
purpose and a plan, for
Yes,
sure.
my son prayed over us before we.
I've always wondered, like, I can't help but wonder, I think, you know, I think that's why the enemy fights them, or any of us, so hard, as hard as he does, because he knows what God has in store for them, and what they're capable of, and what, you know,